One of the things that I've noticed for many, many years over my own life and with my work is the importance of safety for experiencing sexual intimacy. When we are unsafe, there can be this like dissociative type of thing that happens that anytime a sexual act starts, rather than being present with the sensations of the body, we check out. Safety and trust are on the same side of the pendulum. They are directly interwoven. If we are feeling unsafe in any way, it kicks on the survival mechanism of the body. Your libido will typically go down. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Lounge and Happy New Year. I hope you've had the best holiday season. We are jumping into content today talking about trust and safety in regards to libido and sex. I'm kicking off this new year doing this particular podcast myself. So today you have me, Dr. Diane, yours truly. And then next week we will continue on with our guest interviews. So one of the things that I've noticed for many, many years over my own life and with my work is the importance of safety for experiencing sexual intimacy. So for example, for women, one big thing that can come up is not feeling emotionally or mentally safe in some way. And obviously, there's like the big T traumas and problems around safety, and those are important, but that is actually not what I'm talking about here. Safety can be related to small little things, the ability to bring up something that is vulnerable and be heard, listened, and understood. And when we bring up things that are vulnerable or when something happens that violates a level of safety, that actually comes into the sex life, that actually can create this constriction in the body. I was talking to somebody just this week who was sharing, she was in her mid-20s and sharing that she was basically unable to feel anything in her genitals. So one of the things that can happen for women and men is that when we are unsafe, there can be this like dissociative type of thing that happens that anytime a sexual act starts, rather than being present with the sensations of the body, we check out. We go someplace else. Our mind wanders. And when that happens, we're not paying attention to the sensations. We can actually see that we see energetic changes, right? So I'm going to get a little woo-woo on you, and then I'm going to come back to the topic because it's real interesting when we look at energy, right? And energy being this substance, right? This it's a visible substance that actually runs through our body. So one of my doctorates is in Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and what we see with that, which is very interesting, there's studies that have been done on the acupuncture meridian, which are these invisible lines of energy. And what the studies have shown is that if you actually measure the skin impedance, which is the electrical conductivity that the skin outputs, you can actually trace the acupuncture meridian. You can trace these invisible lines of energy because they do actually create this different electrical signal that is actually picked up with certain scientific tools. And you can actually find and validate the acupuncture energetic forces that way. So we know that while this force is invisible, we now know in science that it's very, very, very real. And so what we see is that emotions can cause constrictions in this flow of energy. So we have a flow of energy, for example, that connects the heart to the genitals. And so if something happens where somebody is feeling unsafe or feeling not heard or feeling not validated or whatever they need, we can actually constrict this flow of energy from the heart to the genitals. Think of it almost like having a garden hose, like this constriction I'm talking about. And imagine if you have a garden hose and water is flowing through it just fine. If you want to stop the water without turning the faucet off, what you're going to do is put a kink in the hose, right? And what you're going to get when you get a kink in that hose is that you're going to get a backup of that water energy on one side, and then you're going to have that blockage, and then you're going to have like kind of nothing flowing or just a trickle on the other side. So the same thing that can happen with our energy system where it's like there's just this blockage due to not feeling safe. Now, what I wanted to really bring up, because one of the things that's become apparent to me lately is this huge connection between safety and trust. So, what I've really realized is that safety and trust are on the same side of the pendulum. They're on the same side of the seesaw. And what I mean by that is that they are directly interwoven. So, here's an example of something that can happen that can ruin trust. I'm going to talk about this from a masculine to feminine, and then also from a feminine to masculine perspective. So, because trust can be, of course, be broken in both ways, and whether it's the one way or the other, sex, libido, intimacy, orgasm can all be impacted. So, imagine that somebody is asking their partner. So let's say we'll just pick genders here. So let's say that a woman is asking her male partner to do something to like change a light bulb, and maybe she's she could also be asking this to a female partner. It doesn't matter, right? So a woman is asking her partner, "Hey, honey, will you change the light bulb?" And the partner says something like, "Yeah, I will. I have time to do that tomorrow," and they don't do it. And, they don't acknowledge it, and a couple days go by, and maybe she brings it up again, maybe she doesn't. And maybe the partner says like, "Oh, yeah, 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 honey, I'm on it. I promise I'll do it this weekend." And it doesn't happen again. Now, it might seem silly, right? Because you can look at it from like a bird's eye point of view and be like, "Oh my gosh, of all the different things in life and all the different things that humans do between taking care of work and themselves and house and children and each other and on and on and on, why does changing the light bulb have to actually impact the sex drive?" But here's the connection, because what's really important, especially for her, is that if those little jobs are not done, especially when they're said they were, or they were promised and they said they would be attended to, when they are not done, and not done by the time they are said they would, or at least acknowledged, it can actually start to break down trust. And it's just a minor thing, right? But it's like, gosh, I don't trust them to do this. All of those little things around trust, all of that capacity of like, I can't trust them here and I can't trust them there. Those things actually can lead to feelings of unsafety, especially in her. But, we all have these forces inside of us, right? So that not doing those things can then lead to a feeling of not feeling safe, and therefore things not going very well in the bedroom, because it takes a energy flow to the genitals to feel good. It also takes the ability of the mind to be able to focus so firmly on the genitals and the pleasure, right? The practice of pleasure is connected to the practice of presence, like I've said so many times. So they're really these small little things like that actually can have a pretty major impact on things like trust, libido. And that's that connection between trust and safety. Now, let's look at what can happen to men. And again, like when I talk about men and women, we both have these forces inside of us, but there are these stereotypes that are nice to talk about because they're just good for teaching. But of course, this can apply bidirectionally. Now, for men, one of the ways that the safety trust cycle and problems in the safety trust cycle gets activated, one of the main ways is through emasculation. And, women do this and partners do this to men very frequently, not realizing it, right? So in this light bulb example, if to go back to that, I have to take a break from what we were just talking about because I'm so excited to introduce you to a couple of my favorite toys on the market. Because one of the things I really, really am passionate about when it comes to sexual health, pleasure, passion, is not only those things, because those are very important, but it's also helping you find ways to deeply heal. And this is why I love the company Mystery Vibe so much, because their products I've seen to do just that. So I'm going to tell you about a couple of these. I have a product for women and a product for men here. So this is the female product. This is called the Crescendo 2. You will have links in the show notes. You will also get discounts on this If you use the code Libido20, you will get discount on this product. And what's so cool about this product from a pleasure standpoint, and then we're going to talk about a health standpoint, but from a pleasure standpoint, look what I can do with this product. It is so bendable. So it has all of these hinges where you can bend it in all of these different ways. And what that's allowing you to do is be very specific around which part of the interior of the vagina, G-spot, etc., that you are going to access and stimulate. Now, what internal studies have shown on this particular product is that it increases arousal about 73% and lubrication up to 93%. So that's where I'm talking about, hey, we can get all of this uniqueness of pleasure. We can pinpoint those spots. We can wake up our vagina in ways that maybe other vibrators can't, because you can't get the level of maneuverability and flexibility that you can with this toy. And all of that, and then you can also see in many people an increase in arousal and lubrication for that deep healing component. Also, another product that Mystery Vibe has for women that also has been shown to improve arousal as well as lubrication is called the Legato. I will also put a link in the show notes about that. It's a cock ring that vibrates the entire vulva. It's phenomenal. So also look for that. Again, the code you're looking for is Libido20 for that discount. And now for all the gentlemen watching. So this is the Tenuto 2. So this toy is amazing because it has been researched to improve erections by double. So erections get better, performance gets better, and it can help with prostate health. So it's a super easy toy to use. It looks a little bit strange when you're looking at it, but all you're gonna do is you're gonna just do penile insertion right here. This back part will sit back on the perineum, and voila, there you go. So again, Libido20 for this. If you guys want better erections, if you want to be harder longer, if you want to please your partner longer, and women, if you want to have a better arousal, better lubrication, and wake up those parts of your vagina so that not only are you experiencing more pleasure, more passion, better orgasms in many cases, but you are also deeply healing yourself as well. So again, those will be in the show notes. I hope you take advantage of these discounts and the coupon codes there. Libido20 is your coupon code. I will see you all in a moment as we get back to our show.
A quick word from our sponsors before we continue with the episode.
Ladies, midlife isn't a crisis. It's a power move. On the Mature Allure podcast, we're flipping the script on aging, beauty, wellness, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sherry O, here to keep it real, fun, and fearless. Ready to embrace every chapter? Hit play on Mature Allure wherever you listen to podcasts.
Midlife your way, that's Mature Allure.
There's a few different ways something like that could be handled. If the partner is not able to change the light bulb, let's say they said they would change it by Tuesday, and Tuesday comes around and they're like, wow, I'm just so busy, I can't get to it. One thing that can help to keep that trust is to just acknowledge to their partner and say like, hey, I just want you to know that I said I would do it, by today. I'm feeling, X, Y, Z, and, I'm feeling all these things. And, there is a, here's another solution, right? Here's what we can do instead. So they can even ask their partner like, hey, like, I know this is important to you. Is it cool if I get to it tomorrow? Right. So that sends that signal of acknowledging, yes, I'm on this. Yes, I feel you. Yes, I'm aware of this. And we talked about this some in my recent podcast. If you listen to our December episode with Susan Morgan Taylor, we talked about a bunch about this, and that was part of what inspired this, because Susan and I talk about this in different ways, where she talks about trust more and I talk about safety more. But what I realized in that interview with her that I wanted to bring to the table to this discussion is that deep interplay between trust and safety, right? And so that's how, just kind of by acknowledging it, by saying like, oh, I made this promise. It's not going to work for me, but I want you to know that here's the solution I have. Is this going to work for you? That basically is communicating to the partner, like, I'm aware of your needs. I'm aware of your the promises I made, and you can count on me still, right? We do have to negotiate this because something came up, but this is valuable to me. Your requests are valuable to me. You are valuable to me. You can trust me. Right. So that's that side of things. Now, if we take that to the emasculation, there are so many different ways that men get emasculated. And oftentimes this happens when women are feeling frustrated, or their partners are feeling frustrated, and their partners say something to them that almost like diminishes them a little bit and makes them feel like they are not doing their job of providing, of showing up, of providing in many different ways: love, care, support, financial, whatever it may be. And so when men get emasculated, it actually really diminishes them. It actually takes out their light. And it actually is one way that they begin to feel a sense of that trust safety component, that side of the pendulum really burst. And I've seen this in relationships where all of a sudden it can trigger like men to be avoidant or attachment with, or avoidant or anxious in their attachment style. Let's talk about attachment styles more sometime this year. We should do a podcast on that because I think that would be really useful. But it can really trigger this like withdrawing component. And I've seen situations where men are able to like compartmentalize and still have sex during, they're feeling emasculated. What tends to happen with that is there's this huge disconnect, right? There's this huge level of not being able to show up kind of emotionally, and they're just there for the physical, getting off. So that's something. And another thing that can happen for men during this is almost like the opposite, where they're really shut down. Like I've seen situations where men, after being emasculated, all of a sudden are suffering from erectile dysfunction, or they're showing up to bed and they're just like not engaged. They're just kind of laying there listless, not looking in their partner's eyes. And it just kind of continues that disconnect. And oftentimes this happens when there is like an expectation that is maybe not being met. And then the way that the partner approaches this is very, very problematic, and it makes the other person wrong. So, for example, like I had an opportunity yesterday where I could have totally emasculated my partner. I was doing a lot of extra jobs for my stepson, and it was taking a lot of time, and it was really pulling me away from other things I needed to do. And I was happy to do it, but I was in this project for our stepson. I was doing more of the work. Now, I could have easily like lashed out and been like, "What the heck is wrong with you? Look at how much work I'm doing compared to you. Like, what is your problem?" And, and truthfully, there was like part of me that felt that way, that wanted to do that. But the other side of this is like, I actually never had asked for help before. It's not his job to recognize every time I need help. So I chose a different path, which was just saying like, "Hey, I'm feeling really overwhelmed by all of these tasks. Would you be able to take this, this one particular task off my plate? It would really help me a lot." And immediately he jumped to it. And immediately he was like on it within seconds, super helpful, like just like totally came to my rescue. And, and that's an example of how like, a choice can be made where it's like we can go one way, or I could have like lashed out and made him feel really inferior because he wasn't able to anticipate my needs, and lashed out, and it could have gone a very different way. And so there's we're not perfect, right? I mess up all the time, but it is this continued goal and this continued work to like, how can we communicate in ways that are productive, right? How can we communicate in ways that are not emasculating? How can we communicate in ways that are inspiring trust and safety? So, oftentimes for women, a common thing that women need is like, if those promises are made, and, so like, "Yeah, hi, I'm gonna do this thing," that there is that follow through and that communication. And then for men, making sure that on the opposite side, like that communication is done in a way where there's not that emasculation, because either one of these paths, and again, these, these paths can exist in either one of us. These are just like commonalities that we see between the masculine and feminine. Either one of these paths really can break down that safety and trust bubble. And that safety and trust bubble is one of the foundational things, like I'm saying, that really is helping both party's libido. And if he feels emasculated, he's going to show up in the bedroom and not oftentimes be able to fully give, to fully be present, to fully look in his partner's eyes. And like I said, it can even lead into or an erectile dysfunction issue. Oftentimes, these types of scenarios we're talking about are very stressful. So these communication breakdowns, these breakdowns of safety and trust, the moment we are having a breakdown in safety and trust, what's happening to us is our neurological system is going into fight or flight because in order for us to be relaxed, in order for us to experience trust and safety, that is basically our rest and digest. That is kind of the calming part of our nervous system. If we are feeling unsafe in any way, if we're feeling emasculated, if we're feeling our trust is violated in any of those things, it kicks on the survival mechanism of the body. The survival mechanism we call in the nervous system is known as sympathetic in medicine, but it's also known as fight or flight. And it's really where our body is kicking out a lot more cortisol and adrenaline. When we are doing this, we typically do not have a strong sex drive. Now, there are examples of some people that do have an acceleration in their libido from that kind of like fight or flight stress reaction. But if you notice that yourself, that when you get highly stressed, that typically your libido falls, right? When you have a lot on your mind, your libido falls. When you're worried about something, typically your libido is not as strong. You probably lean towards stress being more of a brake on your libido, which is a more common path. And so when that's happening, when you're in this scenario where you're out of the trust and safety bubble, and you're then in this more stress type of thing because trust has been violated or emasculation has happened. And then all of a sudden, we have all of this chemical change in our body that is leading you to be more in that survival stress mechanism from your neurological system standpoint. When that's happening, your body is getting the signal of, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed, I'm stressed. And when that is happening, what winds up happening is your libido will typically go down most of the time. You're not going to get the same level of blood flow to the genitals, right? These types of stress hormones can affect your hormonal system. They can affect your sleep, your mood, and so much more. So it's a very interwoven system, our neurological system, our libido, our hormones, all really interplay. So one of the foundational things here is to begin to rework how we are approaching each other. And some of this, I think, begins with understanding. I think sometimes it's for some partners, it can be hard to understand that, hey, I promised him I'd change the light bulb and I didn't do it, how that could affect the sex drive. But hopefully with this, you're beginning to see that connection, that those little things violate trust. And, and same thing from the emasculation side. Sometimes it's so easy to just be like, well, I deserve to say this. Like I hear women say that, like, I deserve to be pissed off. I should be pissed off about this because, I expected this thing and it didn't happen and yada, yada. And it's not to say that there's not some level of deserving to feel, upset. However, when we approach it that way, oftentimes it leads to this emasculation. And oftentimes I find that people get upset when they just are feeling, and there's obviously way more reasons than this. I'm oversimplifying this, and I know, just to make a point. But oftentimes people can get upset when it's like, well, they didn't notice that I needed help, or they didn't notice that I needed this, or they should have stepped in more, or I do more work, or all these different things. And that may very well be true, and you can feel very upset about it. However, if we're not asking for what we need, and it's very different if we're asking for what we need and a partner's promising and they're breaking their promise and all those things, right? Both partners have to come to the table here. But what I'm saying is, like, it's so easy, I see, in the emasculation world to kind of validate, like, well, I'm upset about this and this pissed me off, so I need to be able to express it, right? That's what I hear people say. But what's more important than expressing it, I think, is understanding it. Like, if we are upset about something, we want to understand, like, okay, well, why was there no follow through on the light bulb? Or why was there no follow through on the project? Or why did they not notice that you need help or whatever it is, and to have a conversation about it? And much of the time, these things can be resolved just by communication and just by asking for what we need. So that's a huge part of reestablishing that. So I hope this has been helpful. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope everybody has the best New Year. I want to invite everybody to my Libido Club. You can find information about that in the show notes. That's where you get exclusive content from guests. Plus, I think we have at this point 70 or 80 videos, maybe even 90 at this point. Tons of content on how to be a better lover, how to balance your hormones, techniques on how to give a great hand job, for example, give great oral sex, that sort of thing. So you'll find all of that and more at the club. The information on how to join is in the show notes. Thank you all for joining. I'll see you all next time. Thank you for listening to the Libido Lounge. Please don't keep me a secret. Please share this with your friends. You can find me on YouTube, on Instagram, as well as how to work with me at mylibidodoc.com.